MZTV.
Sin uses people to do what? This is what I've been telling you I've never seen before in Romans 6:13. How sin actually hijacks people, but the people volunteer. They volunteer to be implements of sin. What does sin do with these people, and what do we call these people? All these questions will be answered today on MZTV. I'm Martin Zender, your host, into another scriptural extravaganza. Thank you for being here. I pray for comfort and some comfort for all of you. We're going through the tail ends of this eon, the final years of Millennium 6, and when we really understand what evil we have persevered through, I mean, we're going to be shocked. This is the most evil time in human history. More evil than the days of Noah. Yes, more evil than the days of Noah. Those people were mercifully killed. God is going to torment the inhabitants of the earth during the tribulation. Yeah, one swallow of salt water and you were done. 5 months of locusts? Oh, no. No. It's way different. Noah would look at us and say, I don't know how you people do it. That's exactly how Noah talked. But we do. We're stressed. And it's natural. You're not experiencing some strange thing. Just want you to know that. Be comforted that you're not going crazy for no reason. Okay? And to those of you who are already crazy, you're not crazy for no reason. But we are enduring. And that counts for something. Remember the snatching away? Those who are surviving to the presence of the Lord. We are those who will be surviving to the presence of the Lord. That's the exact word Paul uses in 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, surviving. Doesn't sound very glamorous or glorious, does it? But if you're surviving, you're doing great. If you have faith, you're doing great. So hang in there, everybody. Now, Romans 6:13. I'm going to start with verse 12 again, and I'm going to lead into this. There's a new phrase here that I have never, in fact, I thought the wrong thing about it for 40 years. Are you ready for this? Starting with verse 12, Romans 6, let not sin then be reigning in your mortal body. Talked about this yesterday. For you to be obeying its lusts. Sin has lusts. I loved yesterday's show. It was subdued at first because it was early in the morning. I wasn't feeling that well, but as the show went on, it just got clearer and clearer to me. Things are clear to me in my head before I start the show, of course, but as I go, I don't know, something about talking to you about it really brings it to another dimension for me. Nor yet be presenting your members as implements of injustice to sin. Whew, that is a loaded phrase, and I've never investigated that phrase, and I just, even by default, I, Martin Zender, the world's most outspoken Bible scholar, by default looked at this as giving yourself over to sin. But I see it way differently now. It can't be that. It can't be the Christian idea of people sinning. Now, but present yourselves to God. This is the clause of the verse I focused on. Present yourselves to God as if alive from among the dead, and your members as implements of righteousness to God. So presenting your members as implements of righteousness to God is the opposite of presenting your members as implements of injustice to sin. See, there are two different things, two different groups of people can do here. So let's look at the first group. Nor yet be presenting your members as implements of injustice to capital S sin, to the thing. Presenting your members, like here I am, presenting your members as implements. I'm going to look at that word implements here and show you a couple inspired contexts. Implements of injustice to sin. I'm trying, but I just can't read don't sin into this. I mean, I see don't sin other places. I'm not saying that Paul never says not to sin. Of course he does. 1 Corinthians 15:34. Sober up justly and do not be sinning. And in Romans chapter 12, where the behavior part of Romans starts, he tells people not to sin. And I tell you, as always, not to sin. But we're not talking about that here. We're talking again about the power that is animated by Satan that seeks to lie and condemn us. Present your members as implements of injustice to sin. This is a very complicated verse, very complicated clause, and I realize now how complicated it is. There's no simple answer to this, but I have come up with the answer, and I think this is it. The key lies, I believe, in the word implement. Nor yet be presenting your members as implements of injustice to sin. An implement, the Greek word hoplon, Hoplon, it's translated, I wish it had been translated consistently in the Concordant version. I don't know why it wasn't. But in John 18:3, Judas then, getting a squad and deputies of the chief priests and Pharisees, is coming there with lanterns and torches and weapons. Same word, hoplon, weapons. Also, 2 Corinthians 10:4, the weapons of our warfare are not fleshly. So, weapons, translated there, Greek word hoplon, of our warfare are not fleshly. In one case, we're looking at literal warfare, soldiers carrying weapons. In another passage, 2 Corinthians 10, we're looking at figurative warfare, but the word means the same thing. Since I'm reading the Concordant version, I expect consistent translating, so I am disappointed. I mean, if I want two different words for one Greek word, I'll go to the King James Version. Nor yet be presenting your members as weapons. Boy, if that was weapons, then light would come quicker in this passage. Weapons of injustice to sin. Now we know that it's the Christian world, the religious world, that are complete and total slaves of sin. And I don't care if they can go a whole day without sinning. The whole day that they go without sinning, they're a slave of sin. Sin is their Lord. Sin is their master, because they all think that sin can wreck God's opinion of them, and that God is just shaking his head like, oh my gosh, I sent my son to die for that person. What did they think they're doing? And so they're not facing God. I know when their songs play, they raise their hands and they're looking up to heaven. But they don't worship the true God. We know that. Their God eternally torments people. Their Jesus Christ tried to save the world at the cross, but failed. So their God is fake. Their Christ is fake. So they're praising a false deity, and their main occupation is sin. They're really obsessed with sexual sins. Satan has done that on purpose. Satan has totally engaged them to try to stamp out sexual sins from the planet Earth. And while Satan has them busy doing that, he is publishing the most heinous message ever to come from the conclaves of evil, and that is eternal torment. Eternal torment comes right through their midst. They call good evil and evil good. They call the female body evil, and they call eternal torment good. They're totally mixed up, totally reversed. You will not see these people until the great white throne judgment. None of them are saved. None of them. So they're the ones that present themselves to sin. And they think they're presenting their members to God. But they're not, because they're constantly worried and constantly fretting over their flesh. So here's what happens to them. And I'm going to show you what the opposite of this is. The opposite is presenting your members as implements of righteousness to God. So sin has tricked them into thinking that it's still an enemy. So they are presenting themselves, their members, their body, their being, their mind, their soul, they're presenting themselves actually in reality to capital S, sin. But I remind you that Satan is a messenger of light. And so he actually disguises sin as a righteous enterprise. This is amazing. This comes out in this verse, in the subtext. Satan has actually dressed up the battle against sin as a righteous thing, even though Jesus Christ already did it. Who will dare assume to be battling sin when the Son of God spent 6 hours on the cross? How dare they? These people are lost. They're totally lost. They're saying to Jesus Christ, no thanks, we'll take care of this. And so they present their members, their bodies, their minds, their souls to sin. But sin has been sanitized by Satan. Satan has sanitized sin. And so the Christians are in reality presenting themselves to sin. And their bodies then become weapons. Sin then uses them. Nor yet be presenting your members as implements of injustice to sin. So they present themselves to sin, as I've been straining to tell you. And then sin then, let's go in the reverse order. Sin then uses them as implements of injustice. How does that happen? They end up persecuting and killing the people who are going toward God. Every religious person does this, and it's because they presented themselves to sin, and sin has used them as weapons of injustice and sent them against all the true believers, all the people who are presenting their members as implements of righteousness to God, who recognize sin as a conquered foe, who refuse to be dragged into the brawl against the flesh. These are the people who believe God when he says you're justified. These are the people who believe God when he says there's now therefore no condemnation. Nothing indeed is condemnation to those in Christ Jesus. And that God is conciliated to the world, but especially to us because we're his dearest children. And we look God in the eye apart from sin, even though our flesh is failing, our bodies are failing. We're the true believers. And yet they hate us. And again, as I told you, this is being worked out present day by a person who's near to me, who is persecuting me for teaching grace, for teaching freedom. Because that person has presented himself as an implement of injustice to sin. But this is the shock. The shock is that would be the last thing that any Christian would imagine. Well, let's take the Pharisees, Exhibit A. There's a perfect example of people who present themselves to sin. But what did they think? The Pharisees thought they were presenting themselves to God. But what did Jesus Christ say to his disciples concerning them? He said, the day is coming when those who kill you, shed your blood, cut you with a sword, stone you, smash you, crucify you. Those who do that will be assuming that they're doing divine service to God. Isn't this is high-tech truth here. Even the Pharisees assumed they were doing divine service to God by crucifying the Son of God. You can't get anything more radically what than that. That's so opposed to there's no things that are more opposite, more different. I'm straining how to say this. There's nothing a person can think they're doing that can be so the opposite. Where the priests of Jesus' day think they're holy, and they think they're offering divine service to God. But Jesus calls he calls the balls and strikes. He says, your father isn't God. Your father is Satan. Your father is Satan. Imagine how that went over. But that's where this verse comes in. This is what happens. These people present themselves to what looks like a shining city on a hill. Look at this. We can become clean. We can become righteous by straining on our own. But what they're approaching is a mirage. It is a mirage of Satan. It is a beautiful white city with lilies planted along the sides, got a beautiful moat, and they think they're entering this wonderful place, but that's a Hollywood wall completely. Behind it is Satan. Behind it is capital S sin. And that's who these people are actually presenting their members to. They're presenting their members as implements of injustice to sin. So now, sin is going to capture them. Sin is going to capture them. This is what happened with the Pharisees, and use their bodies now as implements of injustice to kill the people of God. And this is what happened to the Pharisees, because they were so damn self-righteous. And why were they self-righteous? Because they worshipped sin. You know they did. They came up with all kinds of laws. The 613 laws of Moses weren't enough. They came up with 600 more. And they were constantly nitpicking the flesh. This is why Paul spends 3 chapters telling you, you're free from this flesh thing. Paul lived under it. He was one of these people. And what was he doing? The same freaking thing. Why do you think he's advising the Romans not to do this? Because he did it. He presented his members to sin as implements of injustice. Sin used him as a slave. Sin hijacked him, used him as a weapon of injustice against the people of God. And anybody who makes stamping sin out, anybody who makes that a career, will inevitably persecute the true people of God. They will. And this verse explains the nuts and bolts of it. It's like they're presenting themselves. Here I am. Do with me what you will. Except they don't see the fangs and the claws and the darkness behind the crystal city. They don't know that Satan disguises himself as a messenger of righteousness, as an angel of light. Satan disguises himself as an angel of light, and his servants as dispensers of righteousness. They don't know that. And so they are then hijacked by sin, capital S sin. They are taken over by the flesh. And this is the irony. They're taken over by the thing that they think they're fighting, by the thing that they think they're conquering. They think they're conquering sin, but sin is conquering them. And here it is. It's right in this context. Nor yet be presenting your members as implements of injustice to sin. Presenting your members to sin. Presenting your members as weapons to sin. Here, sin, use me as a weapon. That's what they're actually doing. But in their mind, they're saying, here, path to righteousness. Here's my opportunity to show God what I can do. And God is going to use me to bless other people because I'm so righteous. And what they all end up doing, all of them, from the hardest Pharisee to the sweetest little old lady at the Pentecostal church, they freaking persecute true believers because sin has taken them over. Sin has hijacked them and used them as weapons, implements. Now, they are sin's implements. That's what this says here. Implements to sin. What's sin going to do then? Sin's going to use these people for unjust acts. And it goes down, it's all the Pharisees, the, quote, men of God of old that killed the prophets. It goes all the way back, all the way back. The self-righteousness is the worst sin. And again, the ultimate irony is the people who are involved in it think that they are the champions of not sinning. It's just incredible. And yet I'm here believing it because this is what Paul says. Well, let's get off of that topic. It's coming down to I'm feeling it today. I'm feeling it today. But by somebody who thinks that they're really being accomplished in the flesh. They're doing awful works of the flesh. They've been hijacked by the enemy that they can't see because they're tricked by the father of lies. So now let's go to the good part. Whew. Let not sin then be reigning in your mortal body for you to be obeying its lust, nor yet be presenting your members as implements of injustice to sin. Oh, no, we're not going to do that. But here's the opposite thing. Present yourselves to God. This is the verse I talked about 2 days ago. As if alive from among the dead. Isn't that better? That's the opposite of presenting yourselves to sin. Present yourselves to God as if alive from among the dead. But what about sin? Screw it. I'm free of it. And I'm going to show you that. I thought I was going to get to it today. Can't believe it. I'm not going to, but I'm going to show you the verse here that caused me to write the book, How to Be Free from Sin While Smoking a Cigarette. That verse is coming up. And this just gets more amazing. It's hard to get more amazing than that. I think the most amazing thing in the last few days has been the sin's lusts. To do the lusts of sin. This is actually related. When we go back to verse 6, by no means still be slaving for sin. Those who present their members as implements of injustice to sin are slaving for sin. But one who dies has been justified from sin, and we died. And our life is hid together with Christ in God. Colossians 3:3. Here it is, verse 12. Let not sin then be reigning in your mortal body for you to be obeying its lust. Its lust. Sin lusts to capture people and then use them to kill the true believers. Sin captures people and uses those people as implements of injustice, weapons of injustice to kill the true believers. Can't say it enough. It's just blowing my mind here, live on MZTV. But we're not of that company, no. We presented ourselves to God as if alive from among the dead. And we presented our members as implements of righteousness to God. We present our bodies to God, not to sin. Look at this. Look at this. The Christians fighting sin think they're presenting themselves to God, but they're not. They're presenting themselves to sin. Because one who presents himself to God is not letting sin lord it over him any longer. Because speaking of Christ in verse 9, death is lording it over him no longer, for in that he died to sin once for all time, yet in that he is living to God. There you go. So dying to sin, it doesn't bother you anymore, it can't condemn you, it really frees you to live to God. These things work hand in hand. As we're living to God, we have to not be living to sin. And if you're living to sin, you can't be living to God. You can't be doing both things at the same time. So we're presenting ourselves to God, and God then uses our bodies, ourselves, as implements of righteousness. This is what God does. God says, I'm going to take you now, since you're concentrating on me and you're not believing the lies of the adversary. Thank you, God. You're the one that gave us that ability to believe this way. Thank you. And God said, I'm going to use your vessels now. I'm going to use you as implements of righteousness. I'm going to use you to herald peace. I'm going to use you to herald salvation. I'm going to use you to herald the conciliation of the world, the success of Christ. I'm going to use you to herald God's Aeonian plan and what the blood of the cross accomplished for the entire Aeonian times and the inhabitants of the Aeonian times. That's a much better occupation, isn't it? That's what God uses us for. And of course, we're going to clash with these other people. Jesus and the Pharisees, the prophets, and the Israelites of old. And today, you and your friends or the pastor in your church who thinks you're crazy, the persecution continues. It's like Ishmael and Isaac. These two things butt heads, and they're right next to each other in the scriptures. You either present your members as implements of righteousness to God, or you present your members as implements of injustice to sin. There's no third option here. There's no third option. And like Ishmael and Isaac, these two, both groups of people who are of the opposite dispositions here, they will go head to head. They will go head to head. And the one who has presented himself or herself as implements of righteousness to God, they will be heralding peace. They will be heralding all the good things. And the other one will be looking at how to get the hell rid of you. The other will be looking at how to hurt you, how to defame you, how to damage your reputation, how to destroy your message. Those people, those religious people, they're out for destruction. Why wouldn't they be? Their God is going to destroy most of the people he created in hell. No, he's not going to destroy them. He's going to actually torture them for eternity. That's their hero. So why would they be any better than their God? Our God is righteous. Our God is a Savior. Our God sent a Son who saved the world. Our God is satisfied with his plan. Our God counted the cost before he sent his Son. Our God's going to get what he wants. So why wouldn't we be the most agreeable people. And we even bless those who persecute us. Yeah, that's our occupation, not presenting ourselves as weapons of injustice to sin. And may God increasingly give us a realization and an understanding of these truths. And I thank him. I thank God for opening up these scriptures again. How these scriptures keep giving and giving and giving after all these years, I don't know. But thank God that they do.